this session now. During the event, and if you're not speaking, please find the mute button. If you've not been to GoToMeeting before, you find it in the audio section. Or up at the top, there's a green microphone. It should be red when you're muted. If you, however, have a question, then please remember to unmute your microphone. There will be time for questions during and after this presentation, and if you don't want to ask them yourselves, there is a chat section in GoToWebinar further down in your toolbar. You can write your question there and direct the question to me, Ewan Maureen, and I will ask the question to Matthew when we have the possibility. And after this presentation and before we all leave, we will be asking you to fill a questionnaire in before you go. I will shortly be sending you the link to the questionnaire on your email, but I will also post it in the chat section here if you want to copy and paste. Now then, I think that's enough from me, and I am very happy to hand the presentation over to Matthieu Branlat, who will introduce himself and tutor us all on the DARWIN Wiki. Thank you, and Matthew, in a second, the stage and sound is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ewan. Okay, and I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully that should be visible to everybody. Yes. Okay, sorry, just a couple technical things. Okay, here we go. So, yes, so thank you very much and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthieu Branlat. I work at SINTEF, which is the organization coordinating the project. And as far as my role is concerned, I'm more particularly leading the work package 2, which is the work package that actually develops the content of the guideline. And so in that context of development of the guidelines, we had, and I'll mention that briefly, but we felt the need to use something that would allow us to do that in a distributed way, and hence the existence of the wiki, which fulfills a certain amount of purposes for us. So without further ado, this is what I'll cover. We'll have just a few slides to start the presentation, but then we'll move straight to the wiki itself. But I wanted to spend maybe 5 minutes to give you an idea about some of the motivations and why we chose this wiki platform. But the heart of the presentation will be really on how to use the wiki from a user standpoint. I'd like to have a bit of time for question and answers. So as Ewan mentioned, please send him questions if you have some. Use the chat for that, especially. But I will also open the microphone for everybody who wants to ask a question directly. If we have time, especially, and if I thought it might be interesting for you to have a quick overview of how a wiki works and how it works for our purposes in Darwin, with the idea that maybe it is something that you might want to consider in your own organizations, or you might want to use the Darwin Wiki in the future. And once again, we'll have to finish another opportunity for questions and answers. Okay, so why did we arrive there? Initially, basically, we had the need to develop content in a way that is distributed across partners. Those partners are distributed across Europe, as you know. We have partners in Italy and Sweden and in Israel that participate in the development of the guidelines. To name a few. Another need was to have content that could evolve in the life of the project, but also evolve potentially after the project. So that was an important need. The need also, because we're developing guidelines and they need to be clear for users, the need to have something that is rather harmonized, that maybe guidelines that sort of cover different topics, but that look a little bit the same, so that people are not lost from one to another. With the idea of, for example, using some kind of template to be able to do that. And then on the user side, especially, there was a strong need to be able to use different formats, or to be able to basically provide a variety of means, whether it's formats or navigation means, to tailor basically to different uses, to different interests, to different needs from the user perspective. All in all, what we have when we look at those various needs is some kind of knowledge management problem. And so in the face of that knowledge management problem, the traditional office solutions, such as developing Word documents or Excel documents and storing them in some kind of distributed storage platform, like we use eRoom, for example, in the project, but SharePoint or whatever. I mean, this was not exactly satisfying, and this did not fill out those needs. So, as a result, the idea was to try to initially identify, about a year and a half ago, we started that effort to start with the identification of whether there would be some kind of existing platform that is simple enough to implement. It was not a major effort as part of the project that we anticipated to put a lot of effort in, so we wanted something relatively simple. And through the work of some colleagues, and we basically identified the possibility to use a wiki. So why a wiki? A wiki is simply stated, it's a simple content management platform for distributed production of content. I think most of you are probably familiar with Wikipedia, which is one example of a wiki, or actually an aggregation of wikis, because they rely on different wikis. But there are lots of different wikis that exist on the internet that you can find easily. The bottom line is that really the idea is that it relies on communities of users that provide content, and basically build in a collaborative way, build pages of content using a very simple syntax. So it's a strong also a desire from the people that designed wiki platforms, so that it's not something that requires a lot of technical knowledge or something like that. And also especially in large platforms like Wikipedia, the content emerges from on the pages, really like something that emerges, and especially good content emerges from a progressively collaborative effort of writing the content, but also of moderating. So the wikis include a variety of ways to revise and moderate content, if you will. And so that's why in the Wikipedia pages you don't have. There are examples of bad writing or obnoxious content, but those tend to be eliminated, as part of a collaborative process of moderation, if you will. So that's in a nutshell what a wiki is, and we are using an extension. Wiki also has wikis have something that is interesting, which is it relies on extensions, so programs, if you will, that have been developed by people that use wikis and that provide certain features. So you have extensions, for example, for improving printing or exporting capabilities, which are very basic initially, but you can improve them with extensions. And one of the extensions is this extension called the Semantic Media Wiki, which is basically a way to create content, but in a very structured way. And so, because it is very structured, then it provides also additional capabilities for making queries. So in the end, we basically build pages that look like a bit like database, in a database type structure. And so it is a convenient way to query the content. So to summarize, what really the wiki is something, the Darwin Wiki is something that is at the intersection of the development of the content on one side, which is currently done by various partners in the Darwin project, that which relies on a variety of templates, if you will, for entering the content and updating it. And on the other side, you have basically different formats that also are use templates to create the different ways of accessing the same information. So, for example, with the idea that some people might want to look at the full content of the guidelines using, for example, their computer, but also potentially a paper format printed at some point. But some people might also need to have just like a quick view of some of the essential elements of the guidelines, and use more like a field format, whether it's on a portable device or whether it's on a simple printed format. So that's the basic idea. Now, if there isn't any question on those motivation parts, I would suggest to, if you want to, I will now move myself to I will leave PowerPoint and move to the wiki itself. If you want to follow along, you will need to connect, because you might have seen already that the wiki requires some kind of connection to be available. There is a nominal path, a standard path, which is to go from the website. So I'll show you how it works. From the Darwin, the project website, you can basically go to the community of practitioners. Here, I will increase the size actually. You can go to the community of practitioners area, which is in the menu up there. If you are a DCoP member, you do have already a username and a password, or you might have been provided. We have had some issues with that, but you might have been provided with a username and a password. And then you log in. And once you are logged in that DCoP area, there's a link to the wiki that you can click on, and your credentials are automatically used for the wiki. Okay, so some of you might not have those credentials, so there we have a quick workaround for the moment, which is to go directly on the wiki, and I'll show that on another window. I'll increase the size as well. Okay, and so if you go to the wiki, which is the same address, it's easier here. So h2020darwin.eu/wiki, and there's a login link on the upper right corner, and you can use the standard guest username, which is a DCoP guest. So pay attention to the lettering, and the password is Darwin Wiki with a big D and big W. Okay, and so if you log in using the DCoP guest, you will see the same. Okay, so from that, now I will use that window. Okay, so I hope it's still well visible, and please send in chat if not. Okay, so once you have logged in the wiki, what you first see is what we have called internally the Darwin Manifesto. The idea of the Darwin Manifesto is to re-clarify for the users what the Darwin guidelines are and what they are not. So with the idea that really where we're trying to go with the guidelines is not to tell you in your organizations what to do, but to help you basically using concepts from the resilience literatures to help you reflect on what you're doing already. Whether it's planning for emergencies in various ways, or collaborating with the organizations you collaborate with in the context of crisis, all the activities that you already have, and help you reflect on those and improve them from a resilience standpoint. That is, build the capabilities from a resilience standpoint that will allow you to behave in a more resilient way in the face of crisis. Okay, that's what the manifesto captures. Then to go to the guidelines, so this menu here is basically, we'll go through the elements of the menu, but this menu on the left is what you will use to access the guidelines. So the view all is the main link to go there. And what you will see is a page that basically aggregates all the short information about all the topics that we are covering, and those topics that correspond to elementary capabilities that we are trying to help organization reach. Those topics are organized into large themes, right? So you will see those large titles in the page, like such as supporting coordination and synchronization, etc. Those are the various themes that we are considering in the guidelines. So you will see things like managing adaptive capacity, assessing resilience, etc. So a number of themes that have been connected with the resilience literature. Okay, and within those themes, as I was saying, you will see more specific topics. So I will use, for example, under the assessing resilience theme, the topic of noticing brittleness. And I'm happy, I've seen that Bethley is online, and I'm happy to see her because she's instrumental in that particular topic. So hi, Beth. So what you will have throughout the wiki is, and I'll show it to you here, is a general idea that there are moments where you want to see a lot of information and moments where you want to see the essential information. And so we have a lot of mechanisms to hide and reveal information as we go. So when you see italic parts, like the one I'm showing right now, that is an invitation to click on and reveal more information. So for all of the previews of the topics, if I click on it, you will get a little bit more information about what is proposed in this particular topic. For example, the types of interventions, the mechanisms that they correspond with, the outcomes that are expected, and the kind of context that they require in order to work. Once, if you are interested in this particular topic, based on the description or the details that I just showed, then you can simply click on the link, and you will see the more complete guideline. Okay, so the guidelines. All of the pages are structured the same way. That is, you will have, and I'll show you here the content, which is the sort of the table of content. But looking at the first level of titles, you will see basically implementation, understanding context, and relevant material. Those three sections will exist in all of the guidelines. What they are is basically so implementation is really the core of the guidelines, and corresponds to the various actions, the various interventions that we are proposing in the guidelines, your organizations to implement. But in addition to this implementation, to this core, understanding the context is a section that will provide a lot of additional information to help you really better understand what's behind the interventions that are proposed. So, for example, what are the objectives that correspond to this particular capability of noticing brittleness? Why are we addressing this capability? How is it illustrated in a variety of events or situations that exist? Also, are there specific? I will come back to that, but we have worked to adapt some of the content and to enrich the content from the perspective of two domains, which are healthcare and ATM, air traffic management. So are there like specific aspects of those domains that we should have in mind, such as specific types of challenges in those domains relative to the implementation of these guidelines, etc. So that those are elements of context. And finally, you have elements that we call the relevant material, which is an ensemble of or a sum of material that complements the guidelines. For example, practices that we have seen in the literature or know from experience that correspond to the same idea, correspond to the same capability, or likewise methods and tools from the literature, especially. And then similarly to in the previous section, you will have specific practices for the domains of healthcare and ATM. We are working on adding also more domains, and then finally some references. So, for example, if really you want to understand more about some of the practices or some of the ideas, etc., you can we link to important references, whether they are articles or books. So this is all outside of the guidelines, really, but allows you to go further if you're interested. And I didn't mention that, but there's finally a last section, which is about navigating within the content. Okay, so all of the guidelines will have the same structure of 3 sections. So in the implementation section, by default, that's the only one that is visible. As I was mentioning, the other sections are, in this case, hidden. So you just click on the title and you will reveal the other sections if you are interested, for example, to understand more of the context. But to come back on the implementation, the implementation is basically divided into 4 main areas. One is what we call it introduction, which is giving some generic indications about what we are proposing. But then you will see more specific actions and implementation and interventions proposed that are divided by according to the phase of the crisis. So what should you do before a crisis? What should you do after a crisis, or sorry, during a crisis or after a crisis? For each of those sections, what you will see is basically a part that explains what is proposed. So, for example, in the case of noticing brittleness, we propose to organize basically workshops or focus groups for which some particular activities are detailed here. And one of the mechanisms that we have used to complement the descriptions of interventions and actions is what we have called triggering questions. That's also based on the part of the work from Bethley. Those triggering questions are not the guidelines per se. What they are is basically a set of questions that are organized in themes, in topics, to help you basically point to the essential ideas, the important points, basically to help, for example, structure a focus group or a discussion in general with between different people. Right. So, for example, in the context of brittleness, where we want to understand what issues might arise, what problems, what challenges might arise in the process of managing a crisis. Aspects of resources, such as the lack of resources, aspects of information, will be important aspects. Whether we can identify beforehand that there might be bottlenecks, etc., etc. Right. So in addition to that basic structure, you will have sometimes, not always, you will have, as I'm showing here, specific information provided by the domains we have considered, so healthcare and air traffic management. And once again, this is, you can see that information if you're interested. Well, that was a bad example, there was nothing there. So from the ATM's perspective, there is here content that was provided to specify a bit more what is described here in the introduction. And you will see that that kind of mechanism also by phases. Right. So this is the ATM perspective on what to do before a crisis, etc. Yes.
This is Beth.
Yes. Hi.
I'm actually back at Siemens this morning, and they are still using this process to analyze brittleness before an outage season. I was happy to hear that. And I just wanted to mention the other thing that we used as part of this process was a mapping of the system itself, a mapping of interdependencies. And in our case, it would be if one outage was linked, and these are basically an outage is when you do maintenance on a power plant, if one was linked to another. So we would also step back and look at the whole system and the interdependencies in the system itself as part of this process.
Yep, great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's a theme. This management of interdependencies is a topic that is part of another theme, but definitely would connect here because as part of the process to understand your system and its potential challenges. Yeah, thank you. What you will see also in the wiki, I will give you an example here, is little bubbles like that. We have developed in parallel with the guidelines. We have developed a terminology that comes. All of the terms are defined based on literature and based on whether it's scientific literature or whether it's standards literature. And so, for example, this notion of brittleness has been defined by Dave Woods, among other things, but among other people, but we're using his definition. And this is provided by those little bubbles. So you will see those links, those helps in different places, especially associated with terminology. I was mentioning initially this the navigation section, which is at the very end of the guideline. The idea behind navigation is that we wanted to sort of break the very linear typical format around guidelines, and using an online tool that relies on like web type capabilities is very convenient for that purpose. So, for example, we put in this navigation section links to a variety of things. So, for example, we're using the resilience abilities to potentially organize the guidelines. So the resilience abilities have been proposed by Eric and Lego, and there are 4 of them, which are basically around anticipation, monitoring, capacity to respond and adapt, and the capacity to learn and evolve. So this notion of noticing brittleness is directly related to the capability to monitor and the capability to learn and evolve. So we can use those links if we are particularly interested in that general capability. So, for example, monitoring, and that will take me to to description and show me the list of associated cards. So surprisingly, this noticeable illness didn't occur, but that's a typical bug based on the demonstration. So it should be in the list here. But that's a way to navigate. That's one way to navigate. And similarly, we have different categories and different. We also try to map the cards, the pages, the topics to different functions of crisis management, whether they are associated with the before phase, and so the preparation type functions, or the functions around building knowledge, etc. And those links function similarly to the one I just showed. And finally, on the content of single guidelines, what I would like to show is, and some of you might have seen that already, we have introduced recently a mechanism for external experts to provide feedback directly to us. So you would use that link on the top right corner. So what I will do is actually open in a new tab. I think it's more it's preferable to do that so that I can keep that page open at the same time. But what this is basically a questionnaire in which you will initially provide some information about you. Yes, I can't go further, but the idea is that it's organized around 4 or 5 questions about how relevant basically you think this particular topic is for your organizations, and how relevant the interventions we proposed are as well. And also we collect ideas you might have, input you might have to improve that content. So for us, it's an important mechanism to involve you and get expert feedback and improve the content of those guidelines. Okay, I will show you a few other pages now. One is this one, an approach principles and objectives, which is from the left side, from the left menu. This is a rather long page that basically tries to describe in details the general project approach. And so you will see some, overview of aspects of resilience and crisis management, some descriptions of the 2 fields, especially that we are drawing from, that is resilience engineering and community resilience. Some considerations about how what we are doing relates to risk management, but is complementary and different. So there are some considerations there. And then a few indications about how to use the guidelines. This how to use the guidelines you will also find in the user manual, which is not complete for the moment, but is a work in progress and has some basic elements about using the wiki and using the guidelines. Another example is the terminology I mentioned. You can click here on the left, and you will have all the list of terms that we currently have. So as you can imagine, this is also a content that is being improved on a regular basis, revised, and the new terms are included. But this gives you a sense of some of the concepts that we are using in the guidelines. Finally, for this part, what I would like to show is the different formats. So, for example, I've shown you the possibility to see all the guidelines, with the idea that that's something that somebody would do, once in front of a screen, in front of the with access to the internet. But you might want in your organization to have a full version of the guidelines in a paper format. So for that, the DRMG book is basically a page that extracts all of the information from the guidelines and presents it in this like full format. The idea of those kinds of pages is that they are meant to be printed. So in this case, I will have to leave the full screen. But from that page, I will basically try to print the page, and I will show you. So in this case, I can choose what kind of headers and footers, but I'll just put the page numbers, and I will open it in the PDF. I'll generate a PDF based on the page. It might take a couple of seconds. Okay, so here's the PDF that it has generated. Okay, so when this PDF is generated, the first page is something that you can throw away and maybe replace with your own organization's presentation page, and then you will have basically all of the guidelines presented in a paper format, and that's information that is extracted dynamically from the wiki. Okay, so this is always, each time you will do that, it is up to date. So the way it's structured is that each time there's a theme, there's a page to present the theme, which is with a small description and shows the cards that are associated with this theme. And then each card, each topic is basically described in full. So all of the information, when I say in full, I mean that all of the information that was potentially hidden in the web version that you needed to click on to reveal, all of that is unfolded, and so you will see the entire content from each of the topics. And once you have that page, you can save it on your computer, and you can basically share it with your colleagues. And that set of guidelines ends with at the end. At the end, I added the terminology to finish this sort of book format. Okay. Okay, so we can take a 5-minute break. If you have any questions about that user side, I'm happy to answer questions you might have through chat or.
It all seems very clear, Matthieu. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Does anyone have a question for Matthieu? I'm sure you'll be wondering a few things. Please don't hesitate.
Yeah. So I will move on, but oh, thank you. I will move on, but if you have questions while I'm presenting, I have a look on the chat, and so don't hesitate to send a question through chat. So what I would like to finish with is to spend maybe 10 minutes to show you a little bit on how it works. Yes, and one of my colleagues mentions the handouts. That's another. Sorry, I'll finish on that. It's another format that we have created, and the goal of the handout compared to the DRMG book is to basically do the same thing, that is list all of the topics that we're covering in the guidelines, but in this case focus really on the it's a quick view, if you will, of the guidelines that really focuses on the implementation part. So that is all of the interventions that we are proposing for the different topics, for the different phases of crisis management. Right. So they are. If you want a quick overview of the guidelines, this is the page to look at and to print. And similarly to similarly to what I showed with the book, you would go through this mechanism of creating a PDF, for example. And you could print directly also from on your printer, but I prefer to go through PDF to be able to do a couple of things. But that's it's the same same idea, but with in a compact way. Okay, so this for I know that some of you will be at the DCoP workshop in a couple of weeks, and we will definitely use the handouts more than the full versions of the guidelines. And we expect you, if you're interested in knowing more than what you have in the handouts, to go on basically on the wiki and look at the full content there, and potentially generate the book if you're interested and want to have the full book. Okay, so that's it for the user side, and I wanted to give you a very quick sense of how it works on the developer side. So here I'm logged in with my own credentials. There are a few more pages here that didn't appear in the menu before, which are on the developer side, and the tools there are more like the sort of the administration part of the wiki, which I'll give you a very, very short overview. But on the developer side, basically, if I look at all the cards that we have created, they will be presented in a format that is basically corresponds to their structure. So I mentioned that the Semantic Media Wiki provides a way to describe pages. So I will use the same card, noticing brittleness, the same topic, and basically it shows you that all of those pages are described using that template, which is a set of basically fields and values, content for this field. So for example, the title of this card is Noticing Brittleness. The description of the purpose is that paragraph here that you saw when I showed initially when I showed the topic, etc. So it's basically the template is what we follow to describe all of the topics. What you see here is actually 3 columns. So you have field and value, but we also are using a column for reviewing purposes. So here I'm only seeing the page, but in order to enter content or to edit the content, I will click on this edit form with form. And basically, the equivalent content will be provided in this form format. I will try to increase the size a little bit. And this is basically the mechanism that we have been using across partners in order to create the guidelines. That is, typically 1 or 2 partners are the main authors, and they will populate the content for the different fields. But other partners or within those 2 partners, we will have reviewing mechanisms, and we will use those fields in order to provide content, to provide suggestions, to provide feedback in general for the content provided. And so that those 2 fields allow us to go back and forth and basically improve the content progressively. But all of those, this large set of fields are the ones that are used to generate the pages that you have seen. So this relationships section, for example, is what is used in the navigation part at the end. The information to better understand the interventions, that's what will end up aggregated into the understanding context section in the user side. And finally, the interventions proposed. This is what will be aggregated in order to populate the implementation section. So that's the main mechanism. And we use internally a number of management pages. So, for example, we have something that is important to track is where are we relative to the different topics that we want to cover. So who are the authors, the main reviewers, what requirements, because we started with a bunch of requirements initially, what do they correspond to, when were they last edited, by whom, etc. So that's a way for us to track our progress. And alert each other about potentially the need to look at a topic that they need to contribute to. Another one is this issues status, which is more like more general, not related to specific topics, but the kind of things that we need to do to improve, for example, the wiki. So, for example, one of the fields that we're using, it's important to identify who specifically is targeted by the concept cards, by the topics that we've covered. And currently we have a mechanism to do it, but we need a better way. So that's one of the issues that we have identified and that we'll try to improve before the end of the project. And so there are a number of issues like that. Some of them are technical and refer to the wiki itself. Some of them are more about the process of development. For some of them might be about the structure of the wiki, so of the template. Sorry, so that's an example. Currently, we have those specific fields for healthcare and air traffic management, but it might be interesting to have a way for other domains also to provide information. So not necessarily one field per domain, but one field that would capture other domains, railway, for example, or something like that. Okay, and finally, yes, I wanted to show you also one of the things that we are working on, and potentially have your opinion about it. But it's among the categories of pages. We would like to basically at the end of the project, in addition to the guidelines and the terminology, to have sort of a catalog, if you will, of practices, methods, tools, strategies that exist in literature or that exist in that we have encountered in our experience. And describe them and basically provide not necessarily a tutorial about how to do it, but to provide a bit more information about how to do it. I mean, we don't have the ambition to really teach you. Some of those methods are require a lot of work and can be quite demanding, but we want to provide more information than what we provide in the pages I showed initially. And so we will develop so slightly more detailed pages of that kind. So in this example, it's the resilience analysis grid, which is a method to understand resilience that was provided by Eric Olnego. But there will be others like that. And then I will finish the presentation with giving you a quick sense of the administration side. And so basically what Semantic Media Wiki relies on is, especially for our purposes, the core things are the properties, forms, and templates. And so properties are all the fields that you have seen. So for example, a title for a guideline is a property, a purpose, a description of intervention before the, these are all properties. And so those properties have a type, like for example, it's a text type field, or it's a number, a numeric type field, or it's a link, etc. Then in order to inform the properties, we define the forms. So when I showed you the examples on the developer side, this was a form that was developed in order to populate, to give content to a topic, to a concept card. And finally, the templates, they are used to display the information. So to gather the properties in the content, in the pages, and to display them in a certain way. So, for example, I showed you briefly the handout. If I look at the template, what is a template? It's basically a call of a number of fields, so number of properties for the pages of interest. So in this case, for the concept card, and those variables, those fields, those properties are then displayed following syntax. So it looks very unreadable right now, but it's basically a fairly simple syntax that wiki sites use, which is basically a combination of wiki-specific syntax and a bit of web like HTML type syntax, like for example divisions or something like that, and that allows us to do relatively simple things like if queries and then this syntax basically is about creating a third level title, etc., etc. So this is what the templates look like. Basically, it's collecting the information and presenting them in various ways. Okay, and to finish, I mean, basically to give you a sense also on our experience, sort of pros and cons of why using a wiki platform, what have we found, what have we not liked, etc. I mean, briefly, I mean, what was interesting in the beginning was basically that on the pro side is that it does not require a lot of skills. So it's convenient when I showed you the template. It's convenient when somebody has some technical skills, but for all of the other contributors, those development skills are not needed. So that's a very convenient thing. Of course, it's open source, it's free, so it's great for prototyping purposes. But also it's something that is, in addition to that, is something that is fairly well documented, whether it's via web resources or whether it's via books that exist, and a wide number of books. And I was mentioning the extensions. There is a large library of extensions that you can use to add particular capabilities, functionalities to the wiki. So that's convenient. On the con side, as I showed you the template, it's yes, it's a bit technical, Johan. I agree, but I showed you the template. But what you can do in terms of presentation remains fairly limited. It has to be fairly simple. So some of you might want to use other formats, structured formats like an XML type format, which allows to do way more than what you can do in a wiki, but it's also, of course, more complicated. An issue also that we've encountered is the fact that the extensions are very convenient, but they also are sometimes related to some versions of the platform, and so depending on the version that you have, you might not have access to some of the extensions, and so that maintenance of functionalities is a bit can be a bit cumbersome from an administration standpoint. But all in all, I think it was a very interesting way to provide an interesting set of functionalities around guidelines that sort of break the traditional linear paper type format of the guidelines and explore ways to have a bit innovative ways of creating the content and also accessing the content. That's it on my side. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm very happy to hear some thoughts and questions that you might have. And the goal is for you now to help us by providing some feedback by the evaluation form that Johan just linked in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Matthieu. That was very good and very, very interesting. Does anyone have a question at the moment? Okay, I will fill in with a question, Matthieu. How does the Darwin project want to gain feedback and recognition of the usage of the DRMG and concept cards when they're actually being used. We know that they will become public at the end of the project, but we are very interested in knowing when the companies or domains are using our results. So just very quickly on how we would like to be recognized and who to turn to when the information is there.
I'm sorry, was that a question for me? I didn't understand.
Yeah, no, yeah, a general question to you. How do we want it? How do we want to gain feedback on that? The concept cards and the wiki is actually being used by end users and domains.
Yeah. Well, okay, if I understand your question correctly, it's the main mechanism for providing feedback currently is the link I shown in associated with each of the pages. That's what we're using currently. At the end of the project, the wiki, the website for the project, and the wiki will be maintained will be accessible and maintained by our partner CAR. But the exact mechanisms with which that will keep on evolving gets part of the discussions that we currently have within the project and part of the sort of exploitation part of the project. And so it's still under discussion and will probably be a topic in the workshop that is upcoming.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that we are, as a project, we are very interested in finding out when we have early adapters. That's more what I meant. I didn't mean to corner you there. So please let me know or any other contact you have within the project if you or other company are using the concept cards already, so we know about this. Elizabeth,
but it's nice.
Beth just gave us.
I think it would be nice indeed to have a way to capture that. Yes, directly from the wiki.
Okay, I have sent you all an email throughout during this session with the link to the questionnaire, but please also find the link in the chat there if you didn't find it in an email. We'll just take 10 minutes to fill this in, so please don't leave the webinar, but please make time to fill the questionnaire and the survey in, and then we'll round up afterwards. So we will give you all 10 minutes. We have a lot of the technical crew from Darwin here attending, so if you have any problems, then please make sure you let us know and we'll help you. Thank you just now.
Matthew, are you still open to take a question?
As soon as my microphone is, yes.
It's Eddie.
Yes.
I mean, given the experience that you've had of doing this work, from a practical point of view, would you be able to give an opinion on where you think the concept cards and the wiki can be of most help to people who have an interest in them? I appreciate that they are designed to be generic and to have a particular type of application, but from the experience we've had to date, could you give a view on where you think they could be of use? Who is it you would encourage to interact with them and to look at the extraordinary information that's in there?
Well, the heart, if you will, the core people that we typically are targeting are people that play a role in crisis management, and especially play a role in how the organizations are set up to manage crises. So whether they are involved in writing procedures, for example, or in organizing trainings, or because these are the people that we want to support in thinking about their own activities and their own products with those resilience concepts in mind. So that's the core. But the one of the strong propositions behind the concept of resilience is that it is something that occurs across the system. So, for example, I talked about noticing brittleness as a specific topic. Noticing brittleness needs to involve people across the systems. For example, in a healthcare context, the noticing brittleness can happen at the level of a nurse or so what we would call a first line responder or a doctor or somebody in charge of setting up the beds. These are the people that are in contact with the activity, and they might be the ones that are the best placed to notice when things are wrong or can go wrong, and so they need to be involved. They are not necessarily the target in terms of having the full guidelines and knowing the full guidelines, but they need to be involved in the processes. And we are also expecting that because ultimately the goal of the project is to develop European level guidelines in parallel with other projects that are working on the same general issue, although it's with different perspectives. But we also hoping to basically influence guidelines at the European level. So we anticipate that policymakers also should be interested in those guidelines. I hope that answers your question.
That's very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
So once again, just a reminder, if you're having any difficulties or problems filling in the survey, then please let us know. We're all here to help you.
So maybe I have a question for the audience, as maybe you are still working on the questionnaire. But if you're done, are there things that you would add to what I just presented? Things that you think are definitely missing?
Matthieu, this is Beth. It looked complete to me, and I was very impressed by the work this team has done. I'm really looking forward to taking a look at it in more detail. It's been a while since I visited the wiki and the website.
Yep, thanks, Beth. Yes, it has evolved quite a bit in the past year, both in terms of content and the wiki itself. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any questions that have arisen for Matthieu once you fill the survey in? Does anyone have any more questions at all? Matthieu, do you have any final words, or are you happy as yet?
No, that's all I wanted to show, to give you a quick overview to everybody, especially for those that are coming to the workshop. I think it's, I hope it will facilitate your navigation in the wiki, you know, for the coming weeks, so that you can read a little bit before you come and have a sense of the kind of things that will be discussed.
Yes, thank you. And if there are no further questions, in that case, I would like to thank you, Matthieu, for this presentation. It's been very good, very interesting, and I agree that this will give us, all the DCoP, a good baseline to work on when we approach the wiki. We will be seeing some of you in Sweden in a few weeks' time, and a big welcome to you all. I'm looking forward to meeting you all there. And those of you who won't be able to attend the upcoming workshop, I hear to hear from you all again very soon. Please do remember that the Darwin Project consider the DCoP as a very valuable aspect and co-creators of the actual project. And please don't hesitate in giving us feedback at any point in time. So this could be on the project itself, or also on the DRMG and the concept cards, and now also on the wiki. So thank you kindly. Thank you for taking part. And if there are no other further questions, I will say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, and see you some of you soon.
Thanks, Matthieu, very much. Thanks, Ewan. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you all.
Thank you both for a very good presentation.
Matthieu, are you able to stay on just for a few seconds?
Yep.
And any other work package leader or member of Darwin is welcome to stay as well. That's fine.